Oh, we're on. So, Bess.
Great. Excellent.
Yeah, do you want to introduce our program?
Yeah, welcome back to Collection Spotlight. We're so happy to have you. This is our ongoing series with me, Bess Murphy. I'm the curator at the Coe Center for the Arts. And the Coe Center, Ralph T. Coe Center for the Arts, is a small nonprofit arts organization in Santa Fe. And we are privileged enough to steward the former collection of Ralph T. Coe, who was a collector and a curator. And our collection continues to grow slowly. And we're very dedicated to connection and learning through hands-on experience. So we have an interactive hands-on collection. Generally speaking, right now, of course, we're very quiet. And so this is our way of getting hands-on with the collection, reaching out to our public. And we're so pleased to be able to partner with America, Meredith, and First American Art Magazine. And she'll introduce herself and her work.
Yeah, so we're the co-hosts for First American Art Magazine. I'm based in Norman, Oklahoma right now, and letting people in. But we're a quarterly print and digital journal. We try to be eclectic and cover all of North and South America that we can. And we're happy later today, Gilcrease will join us and speak, and she'll be featured in the upcoming magazine. But today I'm really excited to introduce Jordan Poorman Cocker, who is fascinating and brilliant and very well spoken. She's a curator, artist, and designer. She's enrolled in the Kiowa Tribe, and she's also of Tongan descent. And she studied in New Zealand, so she brings that perspective, which we're really excited about. She has a master's degree in museum and heritage practice from Victoria University in Wellington, New Zealand. She got her Bachelor of Design at Auckland University of Technology in New Zealand. And her artwork has been exhibited here in Norman, where I'm at the Jacobson House, and also throughout the country, and in New Zealand's Architecture Week and the Prague Quadrennial. So right now she's working at the Gilcrease, and she can talk a little bit about what she's doing. And thank you so much, Jordan. I'm going to ask you to unmute.
Yes. De onde ba bon, de onde bats an, dom toya koe ma kan, toy boga, penaltiga, bego nedo. And ma loa daulava. So hello everyone, my name is Jordan Ailia Poorman Cocker. My Goigu name is Domtoya Goema, meaning Kiowa woman who travels the earth, given by my grandmother, Dorothy DeLon. And shout out to my grandmother, Dolores, for helping me slowly learn my proper Kiowa introduction. Ever since I moved back to Oklahoma a couple of years ago, learning more Kiowa has been a goal of mine. I'm the daughter of Gelikikoka, my father, who is the firstborn in a long line of firstborns descending through Vilifakatahatupofa. And our family are from Tongatapu, Ha'apai, and the whaling village of Vava'u in the Kingdom of Tonga via Aotearoa, New Zealand, for the past 4 generations. My mother is Cedar Tree Woman, Whirlwind Woman, Dots Aima, Deborah Cocker, and she is the daughter of Gail, daughter of Alice, daughter of Padotai, daughter of Keen Tuttle, Dragonfly Woman. And we're Toibo and Paddletee descendants from the Redstone and Rainy Mountain region of the Kiowa Comanche Apache Reservation in Oklahoma. So I was raised in Oklahoma, in OKC when I was little, and then my parents got a house in Edmond when I was in high school. And as America mentioned, I went to university in New Zealand near my dad's people for 7 years, and that was incredible. I feel like I really treasure that experience of being exposed to being Indigenous in 2 ways, and these different approaches in scholarship and research, and of course within the museum and art worlds of really foregrounding that identity. But currently I'm dialing in from Wajaji territory, Osage territory, where I'm a guest, and from Pawhuska, Oklahoma. And I currently work with the Gilcrease Museum in Tulsa as a curatorial scholar of Indigenous art. So as was mentioned, I descend from many incredible men and women and artists. And I'm so grateful to be invited to give this collection spotlight today. I'm never done one of these before, so I'm excited to see how this goes, and just grateful.
And I should mention to everyone, because I always forget, that anyone during the course of the conversation, you can put in questions into the shared chat, and then towards the end or at an appropriate moment, I can read it to Jordan. So Jordan, you don't have to be distracted by the chat. You can focus on what you want to talk about.
Awesome, that sounds good. A little bit about the work I'm doing now. I'm researching the 2D Indigenous paintings collection at the Gilcrease, with a focus on the trajectory of 2D Indigenous art within Indian Territory or present-day Oklahoma. And so my research uses this territory, place-based, land-based lens to kind of more deeply examine the works of over 90 artists. And so to this end, I've been writing a lot. I'll be writing for the next year and a half, several essays, several articles, and over 80 object texts. And there's incredible artists that are part of that collection. So I'm looking at the works of the Kiowa Six, Cherokee painter Narcissa Chisholm Owen, Osage artists Norman Akers, Virginia Stroud. And there's this beautiful Cheyenne and Arapaho ledger book from Fort Reno, which is also part of that collection. So there's some exciting work being done at the Gilcrease. And also the museum hired their first ever curator of Indigenous art and culture this year as well, Chelsea Herr. So we both started the same year. But I'm really glad to be invited on and share a little bit about myself and interview Terry when she gets logged in about her beautiful artwork at the Co. Oh, she is?
Yeah, well, she was. She's coming and going. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh, no, you're good. That's it.
Oh, so did you want to look at her shoes, or did you want to look at your own item to start? Yeah,
well, we might give her a couple of minutes just to log in. I got a text that she's trying to log in.
Huh, I'm seeing her here.
Oh, Terry, are you there?
Huh. Oh, well. She's muted.
Oh, this is a story of 2020.
Which Terry?
Yeah.
Terry Greaves, the one and only. And we should probably mention that Terry Greaves is an advisor for both the First American Art Magazine, and she's also involved with the Co. She's been an advisor and I believe serves on the board of directors of the Co. Bess, is that correct?
She is no longer on the board of directors.
Okay.
Finished up her, I think, a couple of runs with us.
She did her service.
Still, yeah, and we are so honored to have had her working with us, and she continues to be engaged with us in many different ways. So we feel very honored to be able to have a relationship with her beyond just having this wonderful pair of Chuck Taylors in our collection. So if you want, Jordan, we could start off with that. Well, hopefully the internet evens out for Terry. I know it's tricky. I can see that she just bounced back out, so we'll see.
Yeah.
So, and then Jordan, here's the first view, but I can also pick them up, and you just tell me how to hold things. I'm your Vanna White basically, and just tell me which direction you want to angle things and different views so that we can get a little bit more up close and personal with these.
Okay.
And of course, first and foremost, Terry Greaves is a world-renowned beadwork artist.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. I'll talk just quickly while we're waiting for her. She just texted me that she's going to log out and then log back in about my sort of approach or perspective of my curatorial practice. So my practice is really steeped in Indigenous ways of knowing and doing, and privileging relational protocols and worldviews. And I'm sure we all share this belief that, you know, Indigenous artists and makers, as well as communities, really are the experts of our own Indigenous art and design objects. So this was a kind of, I guess, rationale behind wanting to interview Terry about her beautiful Converse. And of course, any reason to visit is like, it's a no-brainer to get into the same space, even if it's just like virtually. But importantly, you know, there's no monolithic Indigenous experience or perspective. There's no monolithic or singular Kiowa perspective or experience. And as descendants, we all come from different families, and there are several different societies. And with that, you know, come specific sets of regalia, songs, practices, priorities, customs. So I just wanted to acknowledge that my voice is one voice in a sea of many Kiowa women. Another part of my practice is having that cultural humility and knowing that, you know, elders and the living descendants in my lineage, who are the oldest, especially grandmothers, aunts, you know, these are the people, these are the women that I look to inform me, and to, at times, if need be, call me in. So today I'll only be sharing what I know as these knowledge ways were handed down to me. But I love these Converse. These Converse are my favorite thing at the Co, I think. And when the first time I saw them, one of my first thoughts were, you know, thinking about how in sort of painting culture, when we think of figures being, you know, visible or present in painting culture for Kiowa, there's so much story to that. There's so much context. And as a kid, I remember once in my life really being told. My brother got invited to serve as Ade Tali of Tongan. And the year he was invited to do that, I think I was only like 13 at the time, maybe 14. Our relatives who have passed on since that time went ahead and sort of described in detail all of the pictorial images on on the teepee that goes with that ceremony. And I just remember hearing these stories and just being in awe, you know, of these figures and these representations that called to mind battles and miraculous feats. But when I see Terry's Converse, I'm so curious as to, you know, to what those stories are that she beaded onto this surface, and what those narratives are. So I'm just gonna check my phone and see if she's had a chance to get back in. Yes.
Can you hear me?
Hi.
Sorry, my apologies. My ancient computer. Thank you for asking me to speak, Jordan. Thank you very much about the shoes. I appreciate it. And I really appreciate you taking the time to think about them and to think about the other work that's in the Co's collection. As I did hear some of what you guys were talking about earlier, my computer wasn't totally fritzed out, but as Bess was saying, talking about this collection is really important. Having new vision on it is really important. So, and I have worked at the Co for a while, so it's really nice to see this event going on where these things can be spoken about by the people who it comes from, rather than interpreted through. So I just want a little shout out to the Co and fam for doing this. I've enjoyed this whole series. And then your question, Jordan, about the shoes, specifically what were they about, I guess?
Yeah, so we can go ahead and start. Where did you draw your
Oh.
inspiration from?
So I had to think about those shoes. Those shoes. So those particular shoes were made when my eldest boy was just a baby, and I hadn't even been pregnant with my second one, or maybe I was pregnant with my second one. So that was quite a while back. And at the time, my babies were brand new, or the eldest one was just born. And at the time, I guess what I was really doing is really my own experiences in the world, which I think is what I think that's what all the illustrators did. I know I've looked at enough Silverhorn to see that's what he was doing. He was, paying attention to what was going on around him and drawing it out and thinking about it and marking down important things. And absolutely, that is part of what I do. And so those particular shoes in that particular time period, my babies were so young, I wasn't really thinking. It's funny how them kids change how you think. I wasn't thinking about I was thinking about my own experiences. I wasn't thinking about like the bigger picture of what you were talking about, like our shared history and our shared meaning stuff. I was really just kind of thinking about, I could only interpret the world through my own experiences of what it was. And so those dancers that are on there are lady dancers, and I was a dancer. I grew up, powwowing and stuff when I was young. And then kind of got away from it because I wasn't into the competition part of it. A lot of the powwows out this way anyways, they're all competition based. They're not like the ones at home. And so that's what I was doing. I was illustrating all those different dance styles and those ladies and how, just the stuff that I enjoy doing. And I'll tell you, part of illustrating the different dance styles was that at the time in the early 90s, or must have been the early 90s, there was this one white artist, and he really got a lot of acclaim for doing these massive sculptures of Indians. But I'd look at them and I'd just be like, what the is he putting on those guys? They look so funny. Their outfits were all mishmash. The beadwork different, whatever. And I mean, he's making monumental damn sculptures of these things, getting them placed all over. And I guess in part for me, it was very specifically grounded in what I knew, and that this is us. These are our contemporary dances. We do still dance them, and we have different styles of whatever. And, I admire these ladies so much because they're all amazing athletes in my eyes, and graceful, and just they embody all the things that you embody as Ade. So it was my admiration for them, and then a little bit of counter to some of that false narrative that's out there from these white people who make pictures and drawings of us and sculptures and whatnot, and they look funny.
Could we take a quick break to take a closer look at those shoes and the imagery?
Here, so I'm gonna hold them up just in front of me. I don't know if you can spotlight me, America.
Yeah.
So that's a southern.
Great. So
that's a Southern Plains cloth dress. So like I was thinking about like powwow competition, and the dress styles, dance styles are categorized, and so this is considered a category of contemporary women's dance, which is the Southern cloth.
Great. I'm gonna turn this one around.
And there's your Southern buckskin, and she's next to the drum, because without the drum you don't dance.
And then Terry, I'm going to show the other one too.
And if you want to see different details, just, just say what.
Exactly. Okay.
And that's Fancy Dancer. And the other thing was that I always try to get movement in them, so that because everybody's dance style is different. And so when you're in the middle of a move, like, your hand is up, well, that's a jiggle dress dancer or whatever, so the way that you hold your body is, like it comes out in the different dance styles. And that is something here's another thing that I noticed. Whenever white people photograph our dancers, they always just photograph the feet. they just zero in on the feet, and it's like, no, I want to see the whole body, because the whole body is involved in the dancing, not just the footwork. It's like the whole body has to look right. So when she's shawl dancing, she's she's flowing right. She's like light on her feet, like a butterfly, or like she's just barely touching. So all right, the other side is jingle dress. She's doing jingle dress dancer. So, those girls, they put their hands on their hips, and they're real, like, shoulders straight and back and up, and their arms and everything, they're pretty, and that's how I tried to capture it. Those particular shoes, when I did them, I had them, and I took them to the 8 Northern Pueblos exhibition, which is no longer up anymore. They don't have it anymore. And it was at that particular time, they were moving it from Pueblo to Pueblo, and Picarise had it. And Ted Coe came by with his entourage, and I didn't know him from Adam. Now, my mom knew him because he was a trader, and my mom had a long relationship with him in her trading post in Wyoming. So, in fact, some of the stuff I believe in the collection is like probably my mom helped him get, maybe, I don't know. Anyways, so after he looked at those shoes, he said that he wanted them, and then I was so excited because that was my big piece for that show. And I sold them to him. I was super excited. And after he left, my mom said, hey, she said, that's Ted Coe you just sold those to. You sold them to someone with a fancy, like a big collection. So they'll go somewhere is what she was trying to tell me. They'll go somewhere.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing so much detail. This is the real beauty and like honor that it is to interview artists and community members themselves. You get these memories. One thing that I really loved that you talked about was the experience that you were having at the time as a young mother, and these shoes, these works of art as kind of being a record of that. And I was super young at that time, but I totally remember the 90s was like, or back in the day, like it was such a beautiful experience to go to those dances. And I went to powwow dances when I was younger. We didn't really compete, but we would just watch people. We just sit there and watch, and that was one of the most fabulous memories, is to see these beaded crowns or beaded trails, or what colors people were putting together in their fabric. And so I think this is something I really picked up when I saw your Converse, was just those memories and that experience of everything in motion. And it really is something, I don't know if people do that anymore, just go to watch and just go to the dance to just look, but yeah, those are the kind of memories that came up for me as well. Can you talk a little bit about, you've already mentioned some of your career arc since these were made. So can you talk a little bit about where you were at in your career then and the Terry Graves today, and where these shoes, these Converse kind of fit in?
Well, I mean, it's a journey, right? It's a journey. And so as you move along, you learn things and you pick up new things for sure. I know that my beadwork from back then to now definitely looks different. My techniques have slightly changed, through the ages. My hand has gotten tighter, hopefully. Fingers crossed, it has gotten tighter. And my eyes are definitely changing. There's no doubt about it. Oh my God. I remember back when I used to be able to sit on the floor cross-legged with one lamp and bead for like 6 hours straight. I just sit on the floor just beading like that forever. Oh my God, now I got like a heating pad attached to my chair. I got the special everything. I got to take breaks. So as you get older, definitely I know my work schedule and all that has changed. In terms of the content of what I focus on, I don't, the focus has changed, but the process hasn't changed. The process is, well, I don't know. I think the process is a human one. It's like, how all of our older people did. They would be observant and watching. And then as they were watching, they would be inspired to make something or to do something for that. And I believe that's how I've kind of you know, pass through, always with the hope of trying to make something for better understanding, I think, overall. So in terms of the content, while the focus of it may have changed, like nowadays, I've been really focusing on women's work because I just think it's so important to put, to give us voice, like all of us voice. So the more that I can speak about women, like Kiowa women, I feel like it helps us speak about Native women, and then I can use that to speak even larger about other issues. But in terms of, so the focus has changed, but in terms of like how personally I come to it, it really is, it's an observational thing of feeling what's happening and trying to pay attention to what's happening, and then trying to make marks about what's happening. And in doing all of that, and in order to communicate with my fellow human beings, all of us, not just Kiowas, but all of us, for greater, hopefully greater respect in this world for each other, and responsibility, you know, the responsibility and respect for one another.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, and this is something that I was talking to Bess in America about when we were thinking about this talk, was you know, this idea of the things that we wear, things that we put on our body, and that we make are records. They're records that they talk about something, and it might not be, you know, you never wear one pair of moccasins your whole life. You know, your dodes are such a good example of where you were at that time, and where your artwork was in that experience and that memory. And I love that. Hearing those stories, that's my favorite part. And I think that's something that, you know, gets lost sometimes in collections or like institutions, and to an extent the art gallery, not having somebody tell you the, you know, the story of something that you're seeing, because of course, especially our like regalia or things that we put on our body, they're so specific, you know, they're for something, they're for somebody. And I really appreciate you taking the time to kind of talk about some of those relationships. It's giving me nostalgia, especially since we, you know, haven't had any gatherings this year.
I know. Well, I will say that one of the things that I have experienced, specifically what you're talking about, is the commodification of our material culture has really changed how, sometimes not just like how we put it out there, but certainly how we view our own things too. And so we make things for not money, okay? That's bottom line, is that at least as Kiowas, we make things for not money. There are other purposes to why we're creating. And so untangling that, and what you're doing in those collections by working with people trying to get the actual story up, oh my goodness, have I ever experienced that, not just in collections, but as an artist. The best experience I ever had with a gallery, Jane Sauer, she made sure that her entire staff came, and they got a 1-hour lecture from me about every one of the pieces that I had presented her with, because she knew that her gallery manager and the other people selling it couldn't sell it if they didn't know the story. My experience with, she's the only one out of all of the galleries out there in the industry that I ever experienced that with. All the rest of them don't care. It's just money. It's just money to them. It's an investment to them. If they can turn it, they will. It's like, can they double their money on it or whatever? And so there's a difference in the way that we consider what our art is meant for. And the consumption of art is really clear to me in museums, because you can see that donors buy things for value, and then they gift them for the value. And that value is monetarily related. And so for us, it's really difficult to untangle some of that stuff when we go into collections and all of that. And it's also the reason why you and I like to talk to artists so much, I think, because we really understand art is not a commodity. We want to hear the stories. I don't care what it is, that tiny little pot at a farmer's market or whatever. A money exchange may happen or not, but I want to hear the story. That's what I'm interested in. That's the communication between humans.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I agree. And I think, you know, I've seen it in other places in the world throughout my studies and also my travels, where, you know, more and more Indigenous folks are creating models for museums and galleries on their own terms and by their own value systems, which does not in any way circle around money or acquisition. And I think that's a part of like the frustrating experience of here in the US is that intersect between a market and Indigenous art. And there's a whole conversation about, who decides what that is and what that means, especially when we go backwards in time. I love your Converse because they were created as an art piece, but we go back and we see, in these collections, other people's possessions. And I think for me, that's always struck me as interesting, especially growing up in Oklahoma, to go to a place and to go to a museum and to see how they put things, because the way that we'll store dodes or moccasins is different. You go to a museum and they got them in this little glass box with stuffing in them. It's like somebody's standing there, but they're not, and we don't know who they are. And I think that decontextualization is a problem that kind of lends itself to,
because they don't know anything.
Mm-hmm.
It's because they don't know anything and they haven't asked us. They haven't actually bothered to ask us. So much of those collections are women's work. Have you ever seen a woman's name on any of it? No. That's only recent. If it is happening, that's very recent. So the anonymity is part of the process of decontextualizing us from the American story. By making us into an object, we are no longer human. And my experience of going into museums and seeing them moccasins, dodes are really hard to look at because the bottoms of them have everybody's footprints on them. And then white people don't never look at that. But man, I tell you, it's the first thing I see.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. And I think
they've been danced. I know where they've been used. I know how I know that someone made them for someone with that in mind, and they don't have the context for understanding any of that. All they see is value from research value that I don't know what your research is because you ain't asked nobody about them. And I don't know why you got to have 50 pair of them. That's the other thing.
Yes, I hope that in the future that we see a shift. We see a shift in those practices. And I know this year has brought a magnifying glass to institutional racism and the practices that follow colonialism. And so I think, the more that we as practitioners sort of pursue these other methods and other approaches to storytelling, I think the better the world will be. Because it's an interesting experience, and it's hard because I feel like it puts people in really tough positions of having to navigate the space between that experience. And I have a lot of memories of, especially like I said, growing up in Oklahoma, of museums as not being good places to be, and it was almost like a sad or a bad thing to see somebody's, piece that they made up there. I mean, it depends on the stories, but it's a history. And I think, when it does come to talking about these contemporary works like your Converse, I feel like making those strings of connection and talking about the continuity between, like you said, objects as being records and placed at a very specific time. I actually have a lot of fun looking at pieces and thinking about the stories that I can see. In a way, I feel like so much of our material culture is almost like it's like a book. And if you know what you're looking at, then you can see things about somebody who this belonged to. And I think that's always been fascinating to me and really interesting. But thank you so much for hopping on here and talking about this. Did you I just wanted to open up a little bit to America or Bess. Did you all have any questions about that you wanted to ask before we moved on?
Sorry, my dogs were being dogs, so I muted myself. But could you speak to the band at the back of the Converse? And also a little backtrack. I know most of us are very familiar with the work, but why Converse also?
Oh, the design I put on the back is an hourglass design, which I'm obsessed with, that hourglass shape and the hourglass design, because it's a original way of our well, they're called strike-a-light bags or ration bags, or I don't know, there's any number of names for them, but they're the bags that the women carry on their belts. And it was a knife and awl in this little bag, and that little bag is hourglass shaped, and that hourglass shape to me is beautiful. I know it has different meanings and different interpretations and all of that, but for me specifically, I see it in Kiowa women's hands, in their hand. I see not only that in the beadwork, but I've seen that hourglass shape painted before on rawhide. And it wasn't until I actually painted some rawhide that I felt that hourglass swoop. I don't know. There's a connection to it. I don't have no stories of it. I just know I like it. And so that's why it's on most of my stuff. And I do it all the time. I really like it. And then what was the other question?
Oh, just to backtrack, like I know a lot of us are very familiar with your artwork, but just for people who might not be, why Converse in the first place?
Oh, okay, yeah. So the story of Converse for me starts back when in 1980, blah blah blah. When I was a young kid, my mom had a trading post on the Wind River Reservation. The Fort Washakie Trading Company is what it was called. Now a lot of people are familiar with it. Old people remember it. In that trading post, she was well known all over Indian country because people liked to trade with her because she was an Indian lady. She wasn't a white guy ripping people off. And so when Indians travel all the time, we're up and down all over the place for dances and ceremonies. We're traveling all the time. And a lot of people would stop in at my mom's trading post because it was along the powwow route from the north to the south, east to the west. They just come through there. And so these Lakota ladies, who oftentimes came over to Wind River because we're close in proximity, they came by and they had it was probably like 1982 or 1983. I remember it was the early 80s. And they came in and they had Converse All-Stars fully beaded with geometric designs on it. Lakota, I mean, they were Lakota all the way, right? You could spot them from a mile away. My sister and I thought they were the most amazing things we'd ever seen in our life. Not only were they Indian, they were also modern. They were like everything that we were. They really spoke to me and my sister of our age and just as contemporary Indian people. Like, heck yeah, we're gonna beat our shoes, shoot. So that was the inspiration for it, and it was so. Fast forward, I don't know, like 10, 12 years later, I'm in California, I'm in college, and I'm dirt poor broke. And my mom is now moved here to Santa Fe, and she's selling Indian art out of a trading post here. And she told me, Terry, make a pair of fully beaded Converse All-Stars. She said, you'll sell them, I'll sell them for you. I said, Mom, that's insane. At that point, I'd never done nothing more than little tiny stuff, like, headbands and whatnot. Like, and so I said, all right, sure, I'll try. And she sent me the shoes because I told you I was dirt poor broke. And so she sent me a pair of Converse, and I looked at them for a long time, like, oh wait, how am I going to do this? And I just laid in at hump stitch the way that them Lakota ladies did. And that first pair, I didn't do Lakota design, I did Cheyenne teepee design because I'm related to Cheyennes. My grandmother married two of them, and I got lots of Cheyenne relatives, so I figured it was a little bit okay because I couldn't. Our geometrics, our Kiowa geometrics don't lay in with hump stitch like that. So there was no way for me to do it Kiowa style. So that's what I did. Those were my original pair. And then my second pair, I did pictorials on them. Just like this, I did pictures on them. And it was from there on that I only do pictures on them. And I really started to see them as an object that I could tell a story with. They didn't have to be matchy and whatever. They really became a sculptural object at that point. And that's the development.
I kind of love that they're physically made of canvas. So you are beading on a canvas.
Yes, I am beading on a canvas.
Yes, there's some crossovers to beading on canvas as well. There's some crossovers, some historical examples of that as well. I just love them.
Yeah, there's canvas stuff all over the place. I have a pair of moccasins in the house that my mom gave me because I once I started making shoes all the time. Like, well, I started off as a moccasin maker. Here, I'm gonna even show you. Got show and tell because you're in my studio.
So you have to hook this.
My first shoe. That's my first shoe.
Oh,
Right there. I started off. This is the very first thing I ever beat it in my life. I started off as a shoemaker. So for me, those shoes really kind of are a natural progression. Really, I mean, they just spoke to me. So.
and Jordan, you were going to talk about some of your works, but Terry, would you be willing to hang on and maybe y'all's conversation is so fascinating that maybe Terry, you might be willing to ask Jordan some questions about her work.
Oh.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. I'd be happy to. Well, I have a couple of works that I wanted to talk about, but the first ones are actually perfect to show you all, and especially Terry, because she gave me the pattern. But I made these baby moccasins this year. I don't know if I got told to hold it until it's awkward.
Oh, cute.
But
And
these are
for a particular person? Sorry.
These are little boys' Kiowa moccasins. So I have a nephew that was, well, he's not born yet, but he's on the way. And I started working on these during COVID, just because, you know, I have this strange at-home time to, you know, not be together with other folks. And so I began these baby mocks back in the winter time, and slowly over time painted them. And so it's a very simple beaded pattern, nothing too flashy, but I had a lot of fun doing them, and I really wanted to make these without having anyone at the time who I was specifically making them for. And so when this little nephew came along, or I got news of him not too long ago, we just had a baby shower for my sister cousin. So I was like, I know who these were for, and I'm really excited about that. But so these are those first mocks, and there's buffalo soles. They're just commercial tanned buffalo hide soles, and yeah, these are those first ones. So I had a good time with them. But I like, you know, like I said, when you're looking in different collections at moccasins, you can kind of see who somebody was or where they've been to. Paint is a really good indication of somebody's travel or where they've been, especially if the moccasins were made, you know, in the 1800s. You can see where they might have gone to by the pigment of the paint. And then, of course, the paint changes over time, but there's some specific colors. There's a really beautiful kind of tealy blue paint that you can only get in certain places. This paint is it's red ochre from here in Oklahoma, and I applied it with animal fat as a binding.
Did you harvest the paint yourself, the pigment?
No, I purchased it, but I know the person who crushed it up. That always makes a difference.
Do you ever use cactus juice?
No, I've never used cactus juice. Is that a good paint binder?
For the rawhide is what I when I paint on mine, I don't actually paint it on, and I know you're supposed to or whatever, but I just tend to rub mine in real hard. But when I do rawhide, I use cactus juice, and it, oh my God, it put on rawhide. God, it puts a beautiful sheen on it. It is exquisite. Like, it's this beautiful gold that once you paint on the pigments and then you put that, oh my God, is it beautiful. Anyway.
No, I never heard of that. I'll have to try that. So when you get the cactus juice, obviously you don't buy it at Trader Joe's, you're getting it. Are you harvesting a cactus? And
yeah,
then
you know, we got so many of those
like
flat, you know, the flat round ones like that, the prickly
those.
Yeah, those. You just get a juicy one, right? A nice juicy one, and cut it off. And then I just burn all the spikes off of it. Like with the torch, I just burn them all off. You could throw it in a fire if you got a fire going. And then I actually boil mine down. So, because I like a lot of it to have on hand. And I boil it for like I throw them all in with just a little bit of water and I boil them down for, I don't know, a while, and it turns into this really goopy, gross stuff. And then I filter it like with a paint filter, you know, like a regular painting filter. Not too, it can't be too fine of a grid or too fine of a mesh. And then you get this beautiful kind of sticky, soupy stuff that you can work as a binder. But I use it specifically to hold the paint onto the rawhide. Well, I use it in binder, but then I also use it to, like, I use it like a clear coat. I don't know how to say it. I put it as a clear coat. And if you look at the really old parfleshes, I've seen some real old ones. There's a rich guy over there who's got a bunch of them. Anyway, those ones that I saw over there, there's a few of them that have this really beautiful golden glow on it. That's cactus juice. I'm guarantee that's cactus juice.
Wow, I'd never heard of that. That's fantastic. You'll have to show me that method.
To do it with too, so go for it.
Awesome. We're learning here. We're learning. The other piece I wanted to kind of show and talk about is this 4-strand that I made this year. So it's taken me some time to get everything together, and I've always have a surplus of projects that I want to work on. But I'll show you these beads. So I collected this jade 2 years ago. I was heading home to New Zealand to visit my dad's family, and my mom and dad, they both live down there right now. And I decided to get this really cheap ticket that had a gigantic layover in Chengdu, China. And so I left, my flight was from San Francisco, and then I was like, well, I'm gonna do it. I've never been to China before. And so I hopped on a plane and went over there. And on my layover, it was pretty cool because the city here, I'll just keep showing these beads. The city is actually built in a circle. So the city planning is in this big cylindrical, sort of circular shape, and it radiates inward. And at the center of the town, or the center of Chengdu, there's this monastery, and that's where I decided to go. So I went there, and they had these beautiful stalls that were lined up along the streets that led into the monastery. And at one of the stalls, they were selling these jade beads. And I love them because they're, I don't know if you can pick it up, my computer is not very like high quality camera, but they have a real stony texture, and you can kind of see some grain of the stone, the veins. And so of course I picked a bunch of them up, and I've just been holding on to them for a while. But I think about them whenever I look at this necklace. It was a pretty crazy time. I had some food, it didn't agree with me, and the rest of my travel was a bit intense, but but the beads were incredible. The beads are incredible. And then I have these ceramic pony beads, which they look really bright in the camera, but they're kind of darker blue. They're kind of like periwinkle. And I got these when I was traveling to Northern Cheyenne with some work friends, and we stopped at a trading post, and so I held on to these. And then the other beads that are on here are some bone, hairpipe bone, bugle beads, and brass, and some sinew, and those are just from Kagi Supernaw's shop over there in Skytook. So this is a piece that I really enjoy, but you know, just like Terry was saying, whenever here, it's not even in frame. Just like Terry was saying, you know, whenever we make something for ourselves, it's supposed to be a bit of where we've been. It's supposed to be a story of something we've done, and that's just kind of how it's been. That's how I was taught to make regalia by my mother. But there's some pretty, I love hearing stories. Terry is such a good storyteller. She really reminds me of the women in my family when they get together. you know, you hear these stories and people were haggling for beads, and then they were on a trip, and then they went all the way, you know, across the state to get some beads. And there's so much context when we're able to kind of represent ourselves and our objects. And then the last kind of piece I wanted to talk about, we only got 10 minutes, is a dress that I made with my mother. So this is a Kiowa dress, and my mom bought me this yellow trade cloth. I think I was 22 for my 22nd birthday, and I really love the color, and so she helped me out. She did the beadwork on the neckline, which is the lane stitch. I kind of showed her some shapes, and she did that for me. And then these are resin elk teeth that we've had from a trip to Billings that we took when I was a kid. We just purchased a whole bunch of them and then held on to them. And so that's what we have on here. And then I have a little medicine tie for, this is my personal dress. This is not like a piece that's for sale or anything like that.
I recognize it. I recognize your dress. See, and then like that, I just said, I recognize your dress. It's so beautiful. God, and I know your mom just loved you, and she's probably really worried about you getting dressed in it and making sure it was perfect. And I just know what goes into it. And can you understand now, audience, what it feels like when we go into these collections and we see these dresses in these containers and these boxes, and just that necklace alone, that 4-strand necklace alone, look at the meaning that 4-strand had to Jordan. Now go look at some of those strands that you see laying up at the Smithsonian or at the Met or wherever the heck it's at, and you tell me, like, when you put a Native person in there with that, we're feeling a bunch of stuff and we're understanding a bunch of stuff that maybe we're not articulate enough to tell you, but there's things in it. That 4-strand is beautiful. And that story of it. Now I'm going to really enjoy when next time I see you wearing it. I'm like, oh, there's the jade from China.
Thank you.
Somebody's dancing over here with us now.
Yeah, thank you. It's true though. Yeah.
You traveling. There's some kind of idea that we're like, I don't know what, but we're travelers, and every Native person I know, we just like to go and see things. Meet new people.
Yes, absolutely. And that's what that my name that I got when I was a young woman is Domtoyak Oima. So Kiowa woman who travels the earth. And I said, hey, it fits. I do love to travel. I like to see new things. But no, that's so true. You know, that I love that this conversation has been such a treat. You know, when we have those opportunities to tell our own stories, this kind of visiting is what happens. You know, people are able to share, and then, you know, almost equally as importantly, our kin or our people are able to listen, and that's relationship making, you know. And it's hard to see, like you said, it's hard to see moccasins or cradle boards is the worst when you see them out and nobody knows who made it, or they have maker unknown, and it's just like, that's clearly somebody, you know, that's somebody's their love for their child, you know. They spent hours on that, and multiple people likely worked on it. And I love to see the little beads too, the special beads that are maybe some coins or a certain type of silver, or, you know, they have those glass bugle beads that they used to use. They kind of chip. They're a little bit dangerous in today's perspective of beads, but, you know, you can really see a time and a place and a story that goes along with these. And it's the story they have to be told, you know. Dang, we're getting all serious on here.
Well,
it's getting real.
I mean, I really, everything that you're saying, and it's more important, not only just in terms of us speaking for ourselves and all of that. And it's really good. And I'm glad we're getting hired into positions and all that. But I'll be real happy when your board of directors at that museum has Native representation and not just a token one. All right. And it's every board of directors on every museum that has a collection of Native art. Until you have Native people sitting on the board of directors making decisions at that high level, you're going to have more of the same. You're going to have more tokenism, more, let's get a little Native person in here to interpret for us, and 101ing it. And there's a lot of 101ing it in Indian world or Indian art. Oh my God, there's so much of it. You know, we're 500 years into this proposition. You would think that they would have, that Americans would have a little knowledge of their America. And it's surprising how much as in the museum world, we are required to do 101 stuff. And I think we can ask more of the American audience at this point, and I think we should. And I think it's really been the kind of scaredy catness of the institutional, white institutional types that have kept that from happening. They're scared to go places that we will go. As Native people, my mom used to have a fashion show here at Swaya at Indian Market. And Stacy Goller reminded me of this. Oh God, I love my mom. She used to have a section during the middle of it. Now that's an all-white audience at Indian Market. They've flown in from all over the place. They're there to see Indians all dressed up in their fancy outfits and looking extra Indian. She'd have a section while they were voting on who was going to win, ask an Indian anything. And she'd sit up there with the mic and she'd let them white people ask any damn question they wanted, because my mom was willing to go there because she wasn't going to take offense to it. She was like, dang it, we're going to talk about stuff that's uncomfortable. If you got a crazy question, just go ahead and I'm going to help you get through it. And I would suggest that that's what we need at the board level at all these museums is, you know, Native person just makes a difference. Representation makes a difference.
Well, I think it's so interesting that you're at Gilcrease, Jordan, because it was founded by a Muskogee Creek man, and somehow that, you know, erasure is one of the biggest problems we face. And the fact that he's Native was erased. And then his wife, who's Osage, was so important in compiling that collection. And then you're in Pawhuska, which is the home of the first tribal museum in, you know, the Osage National Museum. So I think it's really interesting that the stories aren't always linear, that sometimes they go in circle, and sometimes we need to kind of reclaim what we had in the 30s and 40s, which is a little sad.
Absolutely. Time does go in a circle. That's such a good point that you made. Yeah, there's so much history here. And, you know, thinking about that, that's actually something, well, I don't know if you came out and said it, but something I thought about was, especially going to university overseas and thinking about where do I want to go ahead and work, because I had a lot of opportunities. But coming back to Oklahoma was something that was high on my priority list, knowing that when I did, you know, decide to do that, that there would be norms and really complex histories and present day, you know, contemporary, the continuation of those complex histories would all be there waiting, which is, I think it's something, you know, it's something to think about. But there does seem to be this loop. I mean, we're coming up 100 years since, like you said, the 1920s, and there were so many events that happened there. Within the Native art world was being shifted and shoved and moved and created with these incredible artists, but also the collecting of those, and so of those artists' works. So there's this kind of synchronicity, this time-based synchronicity that we're experiencing that I feel like just grateful to both of you women, America and Terry, for the work that you're doing, that I, as a young person, you know, benefit from those hard yards. And I think that's how things go. You know, you do work and hopefully the people who come next to you, beside you, after you, they benefit from that, because representation is still a huge issue, an unresolved issue within this state.
Well, thank you. This has been a really, I know that we can probably talk for hours. Well, we know we can. But
I'm stopping myself, yeah.
Me too. I'm like,
does the audience have any questions that they'd like to share? And do you have any closing comments? You can type it into the what do you call it, the chat.
Are you asking me if I do?
The audience, you? No, if you guys have closing questions too. All right, Cole Taylor has a question for the co.
Okay. Oh, wait.
Oh, hello.
Hi.
Hi, Terry. Nice to see you again. Yeah, I've been, and first of all, thank you guys for presenting. I've been super fascinated with Kiowa beadwork and Kiowa art. It's very fascinating to me. It's a very different style than what I'm used to. So I just want to acknowledge you and Jordan for doing this presentation. But my question is for the co. It's really interesting that this presentation came up, but how are artists, like Jordan's case, how are we able to access the co's collection if we are not in the vicinity for research purposes and whatnot?
Excellent question. So we are baby stepping our way to digitizing our collection. And I say baby stepping because we are a really small staff. So we have a really limited selection on our website right now, but you can also email me or Samantha Tracy, our collections manager, or Bruce Bernstein, our chief curator. You can email anybody, and all of our email addresses are on the website, and we will work with you because that is what our job is, to go through the entire collection. I can send you PDFs. There you go. America just sent my email address. It's out there for everybody. Just reach out, because that's my job, and that's my favorite part of my job is working with people to dig in deeper to our collection. So yeah, absolutely. Cool. I look forward to hearing from you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks for answering my question.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, we'll
so I have to give a little plug for the co, because it's near and dear to my heart. Some best practices, all right? They do have natives on their board of directors, all right? And number two, it's a working collection. It's not all under glass. You can literally, like she just said, email and call them and they will work with you. They're not the field museum.
Yeah. And, I mean, anytime anybody comes into Santa Fe after that can happen a little bit more, everyone is invited to come in at any time, and really you get to work hands-on, really spend some deep, meaningful time with the pieces in the collection, because that's really what we see the best purpose is. That's how we let these pieces continue to live and their stories continue to be told. And so for us, it's really powerful to be able to share the collection as much as we can. So, and keep an eye on our website, and we've got so many grants out there right now working on that and improving that. So hopefully we get some of that money our way too.
And then Jenny Williams had a question for Jordan and Terry. What projects are you working on now?
Well, currently I'm working with the Gilcrease Museum, so I'm writing some object text and an article and thematic text about the 2D Indigenous paintings collection there. There's actually over 2,500 objects in that collection, but I get to write about over 80 works. So that's what I'm currently working on, living in Pasco, working in Tulsa, and everything from home.
And then Terry?
I'm not working on any big project at the moment. What I have been doing is exactly what I'm doing right now. And specifically in conjunction with Hearts of Our People, the exhibition that's open at the Philbrook right now in Tulsa. It's a traveling exhibition that I been working on for the past 5 years. The exhibition closes, its final day is going to be in January 2021. And so when COVID shut everything down in March, the show had just opened in Washington, D.C. And so I watched it be open. I got to go out there twice. Luckily, I was really lucky. I got to go out there twice before things shut down. And then after that, when people started to move to Zoom, I've taken every opportunity that's been given to me to speak about Native art in the museum world. because Hearts of Our People so hot right now. People want to actually talk to me, whatever. I'm glad to talk, and I will, because I think that right now, what Jordan was talking about in terms of an institutional shift that is underfoot in the museums, I don't know how far it's going to go, but there's been a push that can't be ignored at this point. It's part of the reason why her institution now has a Native American art curator. They didn't before. All right. There's stuff underfoot, and so as long as I can continue to help be a voice through Hearts of Our People for that shift towards Native narrative, Native voice, Native point of view being put forward and first before the white interpreters get in there, I will continue to do that. So don't have a big project other than, you know, I got tons of stuff around the house I'm up to, but that's it.
And Jen Tiger asked if any of the work from Hearts of Our People will be shown at the Mokna in Santa Fe, so the Museum of Contemporary Native Arts.
So just a little explanation about big exhibitions, and this is all new stuff to me too, because I'm not a curator, I'm an artist, so I've never ever been on the other side of what one of these things involve. Hearts of Our People borrowed 115 objects from almost 115 different places. Not quite, but we were dang close to it. Our exhibition was unusual in that. Usually exhibitions are not created from that many borrowers, but because of the expanse of what we were doing, we needed it. We have pieces that were prehistory through the present. The prehistorical pieces all need to rest for conservation issues. In fact, all of the borrowed work from institutions all need to rest. We had 4 venues, usually it's only 3. And it was extended through COVID through the beginning of next year in Oklahoma. Consequently, all of the pieces need to go home. They need to rest for conservation issues. The exhibition, when we initially proposed this exhibition of Native American women's art, no one wanted it. This is a very expensive exhibition to mount. It cost $1 million. All right. And what that means is there was a buy-in of institutions. We had to pre-sell the show. This is how it works. I didn't understand this, but this is how it works in America. You have to pre-sell these big exhibitions, and then you get buy-in, and 3 or 4 institutions will share the cost of that $1 million. So when we first proposed this back in 2016, no one wanted it. No one gave a shit, excuse my language, about Native women's art. All right, no one did. We managed to get my co-curator, through her amazing and difficult, very difficult hard work, managed to get us into 4 locations. The Philbrook was always going to be one because we'd asked Christina Burke to be one of our advisors for it. So I'm just giving this background history because a lot of people don't understand how exhibitions work here in America specifically. We had to fundraise for all of it, which meant that we had to go out and beg and borrow, well, no borrowing, but beg for money for this. So all of it was on the front end of it, it was selling. We were selling, which I guess I was ready for because I'm in retail because I sell in art galleries or whatever I know how to sell, right? So you're selling the show, you're selling the importance of it, you're selling. Well, now 4 years later, 5 years later, after this show has been well received and marked as an important one in terms of exhibition, not just in terms of the content of the exhibition, but in terms of its organizational mannerisms, in terms of using Native voice first and really following through with that, even when it's difficult. Now everybody wants it. Now everybody wants it. We've gotten, I don't even know how many requests to have the show at some location or whatever. Well, they made a bad bet on not betting on Native women's art. That's all I can say. And no, it won't be at MoCA.
So any final questions, or shall we wrap it up? I will reveal that Terry's been invited to be an advisory council because she says she'll never curate again. That Denise Neal, who's Delaware, she's Delaware and Cherokee, and she and I are co-curating a survey of Oklahoma Native women's artists that hopefully you guys will all be able to attend September 18th at the opening of First Americans Museum in Oklahoma City, which is not the first intertribal museum in Oklahoma City, but it's going to be the best. I'm really excited and looking forward to that.
Yay.
Thank you, Jordan. Thank you, Jordan. Thank you for speaking about really important things and helping us understand better these things that are so dear to us. They really are. And I appreciate your voice so much. So aho.
Thank you. Well, I'm just grateful to share this space with you all. I I feel like it's always a blessing when we're able to gather and to visit and to talk about true things. So thank you again for that invitation.
And thank you guys so much from the Co. All of us at the Co. We're so honored. Thanks for spending this time with us. And yeah, we look forward to the next time.
We'll see you when it's safe to see you. Cheers.
Yeah.
Have a great week, everybody.
Bye.